Wicked hits theaters this weekend, and I have so many thoughts on this movie, and they go a little something like this. This episode's brought to you by The Perfect Gene. Go to theperfectgene.nyc and use the code DAN15 for a special offer, and stay tuned after the episode for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of Wicked. The embargo has dropped. I'm in my temporary home. One of the reasons that I'm here is that I'm out of town for a couple of different screenings, including a screening for this movie, so I could get you the review at the embargo drop. Wicked is the long-awaited feature adaptation of the 2003 musical that retells the story of the Wizard of Oz with a revisionist take on Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, and the evil Wicked Witch of the West. Cynthia Erivo steps into Idina Menzel's slippers as Elphaba, the wickedly talented witch, who would go on to be labeled Oz's greatest villain, with Ariana Grande taking on Kristen Chenoweth's role of Galinda, the Good Witch, who actually has a nasty streak. The two meet at Shiz University, a Hogwarts-type school where sorcery is taught by Madame Morrible, played by Michelle Yeoh, who's seeking magically talented students to send off to see the Wizard of Oz, played by Jeff Goldblum. Also in the cast are Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, a reckless prince who captures both Galinda and Elphaba's eye, Peter Dinklage as the voice of Goat Professor Dr. Dillamond, and Marissa Bodie as Nessa Rose, Elphaba's sister. So I want to make two things very clear right off the bat. Number one, I have not seen the musical Wicked. I'm a big fan of Broadway musicals. I've seen a lot of them, and Wicked has always been on my to-see list, but I've never had a chance to see it. So my judgment of the movie is somebody who's coming in basically fresh. I've heard a couple of the songs, I knew the premise, but I don't know the musical in and out. I know that a lot of the musical's fans, and they are legion, will probably be judging this movie based off of how it compares to the stage show, but that's not where I'm coming from in this review. The other thing I want to make clear is that this is part one of Wicked, and people have gotten mad at me before by saying that it's a two-part movie because they say it changes their expectations, but the title card for the film, which comes up a few minutes into the movie, literally says Wicked Part 1. Now, the good news, and it can be mixed because sometimes when a movie breaks into multiple parts, it's not very narratively satisfying. The good news here is that this does feel like its own movie. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yes, the story continues, but it feels like the film itself does complete its own narrative arc inside of that part one. And I'm sure it probably was an advantage that it was based on a Broadway musical that has an act one that's aiming to do the same thing. So this doesn't necessarily feel like a movie that leaves you hanging or stops in the middle of the story. It does feel like a complete film, even if it's not the entire Wicked story. Wicked has been doing advanced screenings for a while now, and the social media embargo, as they call it, has also been down for a while, which means that people and critics that have seen the movie early have been free to post on all of their different social platforms, and the buzz for the movie has been extremely positive. And this has been sometimes an issue recently because it seems like every movie, for some reason, if people are allowed to tweet about it or X or post or whatever you want to call it early, it seems like the buzz is always positive. You need to look no further than The Flash and the huge positive buzz that preceded that film. When the movie came out, not so much. So I have grown very skeptical of early social media buzz. However, in this case, I'm happy to report that I think that that early buzz was pretty accurate, or at least I agreed with it, because Wicked is a fantastically realized, well-acted, visually stunning movie that's not only one of my favorite recent movie musicals, it's also one of my favorite movies so far this year. The acting is superb, but first I want to talk about the director of the movie, John M Chu, whose last film was another Broadway musical adaptation, In the Heights, another movie that I really enjoyed that not many people went to see back in 2021 in the early days of going back to the theater, as well as having a movie that was released day and date on streaming. John M Chu doesn't just know how to make a musical, he knows how to make a movie musical. Movies present all kinds of storytelling options that you just can't do on stage, and he understands that, making the musical numbers even more dynamic by cross-cutting locations, using match cuts, and embracing the unlimited possibilities of the cinematic format. You can tell that he and his team meticulously planned out every musical number with an eye not necessarily towards making them better, but for enhancing them for the screen. And I think that it works really well throughout the film. However, Chu also understands how important it is to root the film in stagecraft, given its Broadway origins, and I was amazed by how much of this movie was done practically. Huge classrooms and chambers, an Emerald locomotive, the entirety of Munchkinland. One of the appeals, at least for me, of going to a Broadway show is that it is tactile. You are in the room with these actors, with these sets. These fantastical things are actually happening in front of you. And what John M. Chu does here is to marry the reality of a stage production with the more fantastical elements that doing a movie version allows you to do. And I think that it's a great combination. Along with Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, this is one of my favorite modern movie musicals just on execution alone. John M. Chu is a filmmaker who seems born to make movie musicals, and I think that if you were to transport him back to the golden age of musicals in Hollywood, he would have made some of the all-time greats. Of course, a lot of Wicked also depends on the two leads. I don't want to say concerned, but curious when I heard that Ariana Grande was cast as Glinda, because I knew that she could sing and that she was a popular person, but I'll openly admit that my unfamiliarity with her led me to underestimate her acting. Glinda is largely a comedy role, and if you don't have natural comic ability or comic timing, then it's not going to work. Ariana Grande has both of those, and those are things that you just kind of have. It's really hard to teach you those things. And yet she's also able to pull off the movie's dramatic moments, which is equally as important in getting you to invest in the story. If you don't buy Glinda and Elphaba's friendship, you don't buy the movie, and Grande provides the balance that's needed on her part, the mean girl turned ally who ultimately also takes her place in the often revisionist history of Oz. Cynthia Erivo is an actress that I was more familiar with. I've enjoyed a lot of her previous performances, and she is equally as good as Elphaba. Her character is a tragic one, and we see the everyday pain that Elphaba lives with, but we also see her begin to come out of her shell, and like all tragedies, things begin to look up before events take a turn. Erivo's off-screen statements leading up to the movie's release may have been a distraction, but I can't see how they would overshadow her work in the film because I think this is a triumphant performance. The decision to have a lot of the singing done live was a really, really good one because it grounds the performances, it makes them feel real, and these really are two of the best, and I'll say it, lead performances this year if you're looking at the awards picture. And, because awards season is what it is, Cynthia Erivo is being pushed by the studio as a lead actress, and Ariana Grande is being pushed by the studio as a supporting actress. And I think that actually does a disservice to Grande and her role in the film. These are two co-lead performances, and when we talk about the award season, I think that both of them should be considered for Best Actress. Come Oscar time, should Ariana Grande end up being nominated for Best Supporting Actress alongside Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez, then we will have two nominees in that category that absolutely put in leading performances. Category fraud is a real thing when it comes to the awards circuit, and I think that Ariana Grande and Zoe Saldana both should be nominated in the lead performance category. And yes, there are other performances in the same movie that would be competitive, but what's wrong with that? In the words of Ken Watanabe, let them fight. The supporting cast in the film is also excellent. There's only one case of what I would call movie star casting, and it's a pretty mild case, and that would be Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard of Oz. Movie adaptations from Broadway often feel compelled to cast established stars to enhance box office appeal. The movie version of the producer's musical is a pretty bad offender, and I don't think that Jeff Goldblum is bad, but he was also very Jeff Goldblum, which stuck out a little bit. However, he does have musical experience, so it's not like he's completely out of his element, and it really kind of shows how when you see a movie, it can alter your perception, because on paper, I saw Jeff Goldblum cast as the Wizard of Oz. I thought, that's great casting. Now, once I see the movie, I'm a little bit more on the fence about it, although I'm going to wait and see what happens in part 2, because again, having not seen the show, I suspect that he may have a larger role in that film. As far as the music goes, well, Wicked was a popular Broadway musical for a reason. The songs are catchy and I think are great showcases for the characters. The original songs and music from Stephen Schwartz are accompanied by some new music from composer John Powell. On a technical level, Wicked gets an A+ in pretty much every department, from set and costume design to special and visual effects to the cinematography from Alice Brooks, who shot not only Wicked and In the Heights, but another one of my favorite recent musicals, Tick, Tick, Boom. Winnie Holtzman, who wrote the book for the original musical, actually gets 2 screenplay credits. She gets a solo screenplay credit and then a credit for writing alongside Dana Fox, who's a writer who did The Lost City and Cruella as far as recent releases. And my guess is that Winnie Holtzman got her own credit because this movie is so heavily based on the book of the original musical. Again, I can't say what's new and what was added because I don't have that basis of comparison, but the movie as is, I think, has a really solid screenplay that works on a character level, on a story level, and just on an engaging movie level. Great Broadway musicals don't always make great movies. As a matter of fact, my 2 favorite Broadway musicals are The Phantom of the Opera and Les Miserables, and I don't think either one of them ended up being great movies, but I think that Wicked is a great movie, and it makes me even more interested to see the musical the next time that I get the chance. One of the anxieties around award season this year has been that there isn't a mass appeal movie that could rack up nominations and deservedly contend in major categories. I think Wicked deserves to be considered in those categories and should be in the award season picture. It feels like a big, epic, crowd-pleasing movie that also reminds people why it's great to see films in the theater. There have only been 1 or 2 this year, and not that many, or any really, in the last few months. And I guess Wicked is here to swoop in at the end of the year and remind people why moviegoing can be such a magical experience, because I think that the big screen experience is the way to see the film, just based on the scale of the production and the fact that the audience gets so involved in the story. Honestly, I don't really have anything negative to say about Wicked, so it gets a See It Now rating on my personal rating scale. This is an all ages 4-quadrant easy pick to see over the holidays. I think the only barrier as far as young audiences seeing the movie would be its length, because it's about 2.5 hours long, but otherwise I don't really see any reason why any section of the family wouldn't want to go see the movie, or why it would be inappropriate for any section of the family to go see the film. I really, really liked this movie, and I'm going to be waiting anxiously to see this weekend how it does and how it does across Thanksgiving and going into the Christmas box office season. When it comes to my estimations on its performance, though, if the rest of the audience reacts the way that I did, I'm going to take the over, because I think that Wicked may have a really, really successful run in its future. So those are my thoughts on Wicked. What do you think? Are you going to be heading out to the theater to see it this weekend? Let me know down in the comments below. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor for this review. This video is brought to you by The Perfect Gene. I love talking numbers here on the channel, so here's a number for you. 400,000. That's how many guys have been living comfortably by trying out The Perfect Gene. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, and anyone who's had too much turkey knows that the MVP of that holiday isn't the best quarterback on TV. It's a comfortable pair of pants, the kind that make you look respectable for a turkey dinner, but are also stretchy enough to accommodate that post-feast bulk. No matter how big you are or plan on getting, The Perfect Gene is the choice for you. They come in waist sizes from 26 to 50 and lengths from 26 to 38, which means there are 5,000 possible combinations of pants for you to shop for. And I can promise you, you will find those perfect pants, because my pair of Perfect Jeans are by far the most comfortable ones that I own, and the ones that I'll choose to wear so I can have those extra sweet potatoes without feeling like I'm going to pop a button. Not only does the Perfect Jeans say you'll love their pants, they back it up as well, offering free shipping, exchanges, and returns, making your order risk-free and way less hazardous than navigating conversation with some of your families on Turkey Day. It's finally time to stop putting up with uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectgene.nyc. Listeners and viewers of the show get 15% off your first order, plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use the code DAN15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectgene.nyc with promo code DAN15. After you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about them, so please support the show and tell them that I sent you. F your khakis and get The Perfect Gene. Thanks to The Perfect Gene for sponsoring this review, and thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here. I'm going to have my review for Gladiator 2 here on the channel tomorrow, and more stuff later on in the week. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.